Do you think there is any statutory basis in Obamacare for giving subsidies for folks on federal exchanges in states versus state exchanges?
No, there's not. In fact, if you read the statute, you'll find that it is very carefully worded. It creates a very tightly worded, carefully crafted scheme that only offers tax credits, premium tax credits, in states that establish their own exchanges, and does so to encourage states to take on that task that Congress wanted them to perform, because Congress cannot command states to enact federal programs. Congress did this elsewhere in the ACA. It's told states, as it has told states for almost 50 years now, if you establish a compliant Medicaid program, you will get federal grants to finance that program, and if you don't, you get nothing. You get no Medicaid grants. Congress offered to states establishment grants to help them establish an exchange, and it conditioned the renewal of those grants on states taking adequate steps or sufficient steps toward establishing an exchange, as well as implementing other parts of the statute. So Congress does this sort of thing all the time. The statute is very clear. The tax credits are authorized only in states that establish their own exchanges, not through federal exchanges.
So you not only think that the language is clear, you also think that was not a mistake.
It was not a mistake. And
then to draw the parallel, do you think there's any statutory basis for members of Congress and their staff to get the subsidy that they're getting on the small business exchange?
None whatsoever. The ACA itself is silent about whether the federal government can contribute to the health insurance premiums that members of Congress get through a health insurance plan created under the ACA, such as the DC Shop Exchange or an individual market exchange. But the Office of Personnel Management needs some authorization from Congress somewhere in federal law in order to make those contributions, and there simply is none.
Now, there is authorization for that under the Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan.
That's correct.
But that is, I assume what you're saying is that is different from and doesn't just magically transfer under Obamacare to the small business exchange.
Yeah, so those who did not want Congress to reopen the ACA had a problem, because the ACA does tell members of Congress you can no longer participate in the FEHBP. You can't get your coverage there anymore. And you can only get coverage under, you can only get coverage that was authorized by this act. So basically coverage through an exchange. And that meant that members of Congress could only get coverage really through an individual market exchange or through a shop exchange. If they got it through an individual market exchange, then Congress Congress could, in neither case, could the Office of Personnel Management continue to make contributions to members of Congress, premiums for members of Congress and their staff. That is explicitly prohibited in individual market exchanges. Employers are allowed to do so through the shop exchange, through an exchange such as a DC Shop Exchange. But the problem there is that those exchanges are only for small businesses.
Well, that was going to be my next question. In terms of statutory law, the Obamacare law, isn't it clear that that DC small business exchange we're talking about is limited to small employers of 100 employees or less, and it's actually been limited by DC under the law to 50 employees or less?
That's correct. And so what this committee tried to subpoena last week was the document that somebody filed on behalf of Congress with the DC exchange, attesting that Congress had, I think it was 45 employees, when in fact Congress has 1,000 or more employees. So someone falsified a federal document in order to get members of Congress into the DC Shop Exchange and facilitate these premium contributions that the OPM is not authorized by federal law to make. So there are two problems there. There are these illegal subsidies that members of Congress are receiving, and there's a problem that someone falsified a federal document in order to facilitate those. And I think those are both examples of corruption that Congress needs to investigate.
And with regard to that fraudulent filing, presumably that was done because the exchange under clear statutory law is limited to employers of 50 employees or less?
Presumably, yes.
Okay.